Okay, so this is going to be our Xbox One X upgrade video. We have a Seagate FireCuda 2TB SSHD drive that we're going to install on this Xbox One X system. So we're going to tear it down, install the drive, and replace the front LED with a green LED instead of the white LED. Let's get on with taking the Xbox One X apart. And quickly before I do that, I just wanted to show you something which is kind of interesting. So I've already taken this apart earlier today to basically find the best method for getting the hard drive out, or the quickest method for getting the hard drive out, and removing the fewest screws. So as we're going along, I'll show you the exact screws you need to take out, and you could ignore a bunch of the others. But I figure one more thing I could do before I take it apart is show you the Xbox One X versus the X. And the S model here, you can see, is a little bit not quite as wide. But if we put these, I'm trying to think the best way to do this. I guess if we put it like this, should do the trick. You'll be able to see that the height of the X, make the bottom meet here. Yeah, it's probably, I know it's hard to see that angle, but you can see this upper ledge there. So the height of the S model is a bit taller than the X, and the X is a bit wider. So that's kind of interesting. But the other thing to point out, when we take this apart, you'll see that the interesting thing about the X is the motherboard is upside down. And it's evident in a couple things. One, you can see that the Blu-ray drive is set lower on the Xbox One X. And that's because with the motherboard being up here, they have to put the drive down lower. And let me show you the back is the other obvious difference here as well. And that is the ports themselves. So you can see the ports on the Xbox One X S are near the bottom because the motherboard's near the bottom. On the Xbox One X, the ports are up at the top because the motherboard's at the top. So the motherboard itself is upside down, and then the ports are flipped as well to accommodate, so they, basically so they have the same orientation as the older models. Anyways, thought that was kind of interesting. And I also put the two systems on a scale, and I forget what the number was, but basically I think it was 6 pounds 6 ounces is the S, and 8 pounds 2 ounces is the X. So this is about 1 pound and 4 ounces more than the S model, and that's probably the liquid for the liquid cooling or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, aside from all that, let's actually get this apart. So I mentioned that we do this here. I'll try to keep this upright as much as possible. That's the other thing I kept doing in my unboxing video. I had everything upside down all the time, and that was kind of driving me nuts when I was editing the video. Okay, so one great thing about the X model is that you don't need one of these pry tools to get this model open, which is fantastic. I hate the pry tools. They break all the time. It's much easier to get into. I mentioned in my unboxing video that there's a warranty seal here that I've already removed. I'll show you a quick picture of that. Once you've removed that sticker, though, you have two T10 hex bit screws that you can remove from the back. And this is new. All the see, I don't know if you can. There's not much to see. It's just a screw. But this is new compared to the Xbox One original model, where there were no outward facing screws, and that was also true with the S. But I honestly like this a lot better. Okay, so we take these two screws out, and here's the next tip that I found rather useful. So once we take those screws out, the case itself will push forward, and we're just going to do that so it pops. And if we look at the back here, if I put it down on its face, it's going to push the case back down. But I wanted to show you on one side, and it happens to be the right hand side looking at it from the back. You'll see that this is flush here, whereas this side, the top, is not flush. It comes out. You can see it comes out above my fingers there. It doesn't on that side. So what that means is we want to pull the case. I want to put this down. So we're going to pull the case up from this side, basically. I think that was how I was doing it, yeah. So make sure it's pushed forward. And then what we want to do, yeah, pull the case up a little bit. Oh, okay. Okay, I've done this a few times, but you forget already. So we don't have to pull it all. So basically just lift from this side, and then it will, basically you pull up and then pull out, and the case comes right off. Now when you're putting it back, you do just the opposite of that, and I'll show you that when I put it all back together. But that's the easiest way to get this top case off. Okay, we'll put that aside. And now, this is the top of the system, just to show you the way the ports are all facing down. But you can see this is actually the back of the processor. Move these screws out of the way here. So you can see this is the back of the processor itself, and the hard drive is actually right here. And these are the 4 screws to dislodge the hard drive. So we're going to do that first. The outer screws were hex bit T10s. Most of these inner screws are also T10s. There are a few that are T8s, and I'll mention that when I get to them. So I'm going to move these, take out these screws here. So I put all the screws here in front. Sometimes it is useful. I might even show a picture on the screen of all the screws you're going to want to remove. But it's useful to see what the screws actually look like sometimes in these videos. So if you take it apart yourself and you forget which screw goes where, you can use the picture guide to help you. Okay, so we'll do the hard drive first. Now, similar to the S model and the original model, there are screws that go all the way to the other side of the case, which hold this plastic in place. In this case, the bottom plastic. I think it's always that case. Yeah. So the screws that hold the bottom on, one thing that differs from on this X model versus the S is on the S, they had nicely labeled each screw. They had F and B, so you kind of knew what each screw's function was. They don't have that here. There's no labeling for the screws at all. But what they do have is they have flat screws. They're round, but they're flat on the top, and they have others that are rounded on the top. So the ones we're going to want to pull next, and there's going to be 6 of them, are these flat-headed screws. So there's one here, here, here. It's 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to take all those screws out now. And these are the longer headed screws. Like that. Now, once you have taken your system apart once or twice, these screws get a little easier to take in and out. You'll probably find that they're actually, there's even a little bit of plastic that comes off. They're just they're screwed directly into plastic, so as we take them out and put them back in again, it does wear the threads a little bit better. But that also means you want to be careful when you're putting the screws in. You don't want to over tighten them so that they damage the plastic, or they do that thing where they spin forever. And number 6. Okay, so we got our hard drive disconnected. We have the top case disconnected. And so our next bit is this guy here. So there is a cable which runs to the front. And so as it turns out, there's a little USB hub and sync button here, or there's a USB port and a sync button. And it's actually connected by this connector here. And so we have to take this off. So we're going to do those 2 screws. And I mentioned some are T8s. In this case, these are T8 screws. So we're going to take these 2 off here. Two. And then this just pops straight up. Okay, so you just pull straight up. Don't pull sideways or anything like that. Now that's disconnected. And I think that should do it. Yeah, almost positive that should do it. All right, so once we have that off, what we'll do is, now this part, I did this without having to be on camera before, so it was a little easy to figure out what I was trying to do. Oh, yeah. So on the front here, so right now, this is the bottom of the system. And this is actually the, I'd say it's the RF board. I think it actually is. There is a chip here. There's a couple boards here. Oh, yeah. There's actually a chip right here on the back. This is likely the wireless network, and then this is likely the Bluetooth for the controllers. I don't know for sure, but just guessing here. But there's a cable that we want to disconnect here. It's right here. So the cable itself is on the bottom, but to unlatch it, you pull away at the top, and then it lifts up like that. And now this cable will fall straight out. Now, I think what we want to do here is, I think at this point, we're going to make sure we lift this away, because we're going to put this down on the top and have the bottom here. And we're going to lift straight up. And away we go. And so that is the bottom case removed. And you can see why we had to take those two screws out here, because that is connected to this bottom part of the case. And then we have that cable there. Okay. Now this particular system, we're going to also be doing the front light. And again, this is the front of the system. This is the light that we're going to take out. Apologize if that's a bit out of focus. I can show you a picture of a close-up of what that light actually looks like. Now, I believe these are T8 as well. So there are 3 screws to remove for this. I should have mentioned that. There's 1, 2, 3. There are these gold screws. Very unique, very obvious where they go. Now, if you're doing the hard drive, you don't need to take this board off. And in fact, I might cut this out for that video. But this just lifts straight up. So again, you don't need to do this if you're going to do the hard drive. So put that aside. Okay, so now it's time to get the board off. So again, this is the top of the system. So there are 2 more screws we need to remove, and then we're done removing screws. And so we're going to flip this around, and right now the back of the system is facing me. And we're going to remove this left screw, this right screw. Now, it might be hard to see that on camera. This is a flat top screw, and this one is a round top screw. And I believe, let's see, if they're T10s. Yep. So it looks like the USB port screws, these screws here are T8s, and these bottom screws are also T8s. The rounded top here is on our right hand side. And you can see, I don't know if you can make that on camera, you can see the right hand screw is bigger, is taller than the left. Okay, so with that done, we'll now be able to lift the bottom off, like so. Okay, so that's the bottom. And so, as I said about the upside down thing, again, that's the top. This is the bottom. So now from the bottom, we can actually see everything. And as it turns out, the hard drive is underneath the Blu-ray drive. So you want to be very careful here. I need to make a video on this, but I've had a lot of people recently with some E100 errors, and that basically means your optical drive is dead or not responding. So you want to be very careful with this. Make sure you're not plugged in or anything like that. Make sure you just pull the connectors straight away so you don't bend them or break them. And there's actually no screws holding this in. It's just resting right on top here. So I'm guessing the metal cage must hold that in place. Okay, so that's a Blu-ray drive. We'll put that out of the way. Move it. Let's put that over here. Okay, and so now we have our bare hard drive. So as I said, we did the bare minimum to basically get this drive out of here. So I think we got to, this is as far as I went before. I didn't actually take the drive out. I just wanted to get to it. So again, I'm just going to pull the power connector straight up, and now I'm pulling the SATA connector straight up. And now this lifts out. Okay, so it looks like we got 4 more screws. This is exactly like the S and the Xbox One original. You don't need to take these bigger headed screws out. You just want to take the smaller ones to get the hard drive out. And these are T10s as well. All right, so I'll take our hard drive off here. Just want to get these screws. 1, 2. Okay, so that's all 4 screws out. So we're left here with the tray. When you're putting this back together, there's those 2 holes there which line up with these 2 holes here. And you just put it down like that and then just put the screws back in. So it's pretty easy to get that all back together. But here's our bare drive, and we're just going to take this connector off the end. And again, you just pull straight away. Don't bend up or down. Just pull straight away. You know, and then you connect it again. That's all you do. Okay, so here's our Xbox One drive. We can see, I don't know how well you can see that, but this is a Seagate mobile 1 terabyte drive. It's not obvious here, but it's likely 5400 RPM. I don't know if it says it. I could look up the model later and just post it on the screen here if it's a 5400 RPM. I assume that it is. Anyways, all right, so in this particular case, this Xbox One X has never been used. So I did boot it, but we've never actually added an account or any games or anything like that. So we don't need to worry about this drive at all. We can basically put this drive aside. And what we're going to do next is go to the PC, and we're actually going to format this drive and put the update files on it. And but prior to that, we're going to hook up this drive to the PC and double check. We're going to check to see if this is what we think it is. I've already had a couple of people confirm this, but we'll check it for ourselves, that this is using the same 1 terabyte drive structure as the S and the Xbox original systems. And after we do that, we'll hook up the 2 terabyte drive and get that going. So I'll show you that entire process now. Okay, so it's now time to first check our 1 terabyte drive we pulled from the Xbox One X, and then we're going to format the 2 terabyte drive. This is the new cable I'm trying to promote in all my videos. The last video I made about, what was it? Not the unboxing, but the other video I made about the drive speeds. I mentioned this cable, and I'm trying to push this because it's as simple as possible for people to use. If you have a way to hook up your SATA drive to your PC, to your desktop, either using an internal SATA port or you have a USB to SATA device already, then great. You can continue to use that. But for people that don't have something to hook up a SATA drive to either their laptop or their desktop, this is a good way to go. It's about $10 to $12 on Amazon. And it's very simple. There's one end that goes into the hard drive, like so, and the other end goes into a free USB port. This is a USB 3 connection here. I'm pretty sure this would work on a USB 2.0 port as well, but what I'm going to show here is using it with USB 3. And so we're going to connect that in. So I'm going to walk over and hook it up and show you the disk management, show you adding it, showing it being added to the PC itself. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so here we go. We're going to actually hook this up to my desktop. Okay, so we see all those, hear all those wonderful chimes, and there you can see the drive actually appeared. It's fantastic. Right now it's assigning drive letters to the drive. So we can see this is our 1 terabyte drive. It's just under 1 terabyte, right? And here's our user content partition, 781 gigabytes. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to run our script on this drive to double check the GUID values to make sure they match with the original Xbox One and the Xbox One S. Okay, so we're going to download a copy of my scripts. Now there's 2 sites that I have that are hosting this particular file. It's called Xbox One HDD Master 5. That's the latest version, and I have one hosted on FileTrip and I have another hosted on Google. So we'll download the FileTrip one first. The link will be in the description. This is the actual link, and you basically just say download file, and you want to say save. And I'm using Firefox here, and it automatically saves it to downloads, which is fine. And let me just show you the same process with Google. So this link is also in the description. So we do our Google link here, and for this we want to right click it, and we're going to say download. And we're going to also say save. So there we go. So we downloaded 2 copies of it. So if we go to our downloads folder here, which should be right here on the left hand side, we should see 2 copies, and you can see they're both the same. So we don't need both, but we're going to take the first one here, and we're going to right click it and say copy, and we're going to put this onto our desktop. And this will make it a little bit easier for running the scripts later, because if you put it on your desktop, the commands I run to actually get to the script will be pretty much the same for you as well. Okay, so let's see here. So first what we're going to do is we want to extract this zip file. So we're going to use 7-zip here. I certainly recommend that you download a copy of 7-zip as well. I'll put the link in the description as well. I'll give you this link here. And what most people are going to want to download is this guy right here, the second one, the 7-zip for 64-bit Windows. I assume most people have 64-bit Windows, but if it complains that you can't install it, then you'll want to download the one above that. But it's the same sort of thing. You click download, you save this, and then just run this from downloads. So we'll save that, go here, and we'll go into our downloads, and here's our 7-zip. So we're just going to double click this, and you want to run it, that's fine. And just basically say install and follow all the prompts. So we're not actually going to install that here because we already have it installed. So let's go back to our zip file, right click, and we're going to go to 7-zip, and we're going to say, we'll open the archive so you can see what's in it. And here's our folder. And so we'll select the folder and we'll just click extract, and we'll let it do our default here and say OK. And there we go. And that should do it. We're going to double click it. You don't want to double click the zip file because you won't be able to run the script from within the zip. In fact, at this point we can even move that out of the way because we have a copy in our downloads folder anyway. And we're just going to double click the folder. We're going to double click the Win folder, and we're going to right click the Create Xbox Drive and say Run as Administrator. And it's going to ask you if you really want to do this. We're going to say yes. And here's our script here. So we're going to do what it says. Press any key. And I can't stress enough, on your system you want to make sure you run this script as administrator, otherwise you won't be able to see the drives. Now the drive that we want here is disk 3. It's the 1 terabyte drive, so we're going to say 3. And the first thing it's going to do is show us what's on the disk already. Now we don't actually want to format this drive, we just want to double check that the values are equal to that of our older Xbox Original and Xbox S drives. So I happen to have a chart here. One thing, let's check really quick. Don't know if I put a chart in here as well, so I have a README file. Don't know if I put the values in here. I showed an example of it running, but it happened to be against a 2 terabyte drive, so the values won't match up. Oh, actually, here, number 6. Okay, so you don't need my web page, which you don't have anyways. This is the README Windows file, which is in the same folder as the create Xbox drive script. And we go down here to number 6, and what we want to do, let's move this over here, put our cursor there, and we want to do a comparison. So here's the 1 terabyte disk GUID, here's the 500, and here's the 2 terabyte. So we want to see that the 1 terabyte matches this, and you can see it does already. Basically, you can shortcut it by looking at the front, the beginning, and the end. It's highly unlikely for an automatically generated GUID to have some matching characters at the beginning and end and not match completely. And then for the rest of the partition stuff, so the next 3 going down, they should all be exactly the same. B3, 86, C9, 98, 9A, and 24. You can see all those match up. So there you go. So this is proof positive that the drive the Xbox One X ships with, the 1 terabyte drive, is a match to the 1 terabyte drives in the S models and the original Xbox One systems. Okay, so we're not actually going to run the script here, so we're going to answer no to this. We just wanted to double check the drive, and press any key to continue. This bit here is where it tries to change the command line interface to English on non-English systems. So in our case, it won't actually make any changes because we're already using English here. Okay, there we go. So the script closes out. Okay, so what we're going to want to do now is disconnect our drive. So we're going to go back to disk management here. Now we should be able to click here, look for our USB, and we want to say eject. And sometimes you get lucky like that and it just ejects. If that doesn't happen, if it says the drive's in use, you can't safely eject it, what you would do is you click over here on the disk, right click, and say offline to force it offline, then you could do the eject. Okay, so what we're going to do now is attach our 2 terabyte drive. Okay, so I'm just going to basically disconnect the cable from the computer, the USB end from the computer, then disconnect the drive at the SATA interface, connect the SATA interface to the 2 terabyte drive, and then reconnect the USB connector to the computer, like so. And with any luck, it should show up in disk management, and there it is. So this is an absolutely brand new drive. I haven't even attached it to a computer before. You can see it's completely blank. I figured that would be the best example here for you to see. And so this time we're going to run our script again, but we're actually going to format the drive. Okay, so we're going to shrink this down. Done with our web browser, we're going to shrink that down as well. And yeah, let's reopen everything. Okay, so we're going to go back to our folder here. We're going to double click the folder, double click Win, and we're going to right click Create Xbox Drive, and we're going to say Run as Administrator. And we want to say yes to make changes. And here's our command prompt. So again, we're going to want to do what it says, so we're going to press a key. Okay, so again, this is our 2 terabyte drive here. You can see it's just under 2 terabytes or under 2,000 gigabytes. Yeah, so we're going to select 3. It's going to scan the disk and let you know what it might destroy. In this case, the disk is empty, so you can see it doesn't report anything. Okay, so it says it's going to erase the disk, and that's fine. And here's our option for selecting the drive size. Okay, so in this case we have a 2 terabyte drive, so we're going to want to pick option D. Just for anyone that's doing a different type of upgrade, maybe they're not upgrading, maybe they're moving to a 500 gigabyte SSD, which is still an upgrade, but maybe they're not going to a 2 terabyte drive. You would just pick option B. And if you were moving to a 1 terabyte drive, you can choose option C. Now, I recommend no one ever picks option A. Option A would be, or is meant for, let's say you have a 750 gigabyte drive and you want to auto size the drive to use that full space on the 750 gigabyte drive. But if you do that, it's exactly what it says. It's non-standard, and it's likely the Xbox One won't handle the drive properly. Games won't open, you won't be able to add accounts, remove accounts, that sort of thing. Historically, the auto size option, in fact, the auto size option has been there since the inception of the script, and there was a time before 2015 that you could auto size any disk. Basically, you format it as a 500 gigabyte disk, but increase the size, and it would work. But after September 2015, that isn't the case anymore, and the only drive sizes that work properly are 500 gigabyte, 1 terabyte, and 2 terabytes. So again, ignore option A. So if you have a 750 gig drive, in that case, you would want to format as a 500 gigabyte drive, so you would choose option B. Anyways, we have a 2 terabyte drive here, so let's hit D. Okay, and that's it. So let the computer do what it's going to do. You're going to see a bunch of prompts on the screen. Windows opening, a bunch of things happening. Don't do anything. Just let the script do its thing. Okay, and the script is done. So at this point, it might be a good idea to double check that everything worked okay. If you do have any remaining windows like this you need to format, just click the X or click cancel. You don't want to format the disk. The script actually did all the formatting for you. It's just Windows being Windows and asking for you to do stuff that you don't actually need to do. Okay, so we're going to open this README file again so we can make sure that our GUIDs match up. This is an important step because a few people will comment on my videos at times that they've used the script to format the drive and they've installed the drive, but it doesn't work. And some of the time the reason it doesn't work is because the drive wasn't formatted properly. I'll say that there is, I've seen on occasion the script actually do the wrong thing and not properly format the drive. If that's the case, so if you go here and you go in this README file and check against number 6 and things don't match up, then you'll want to rerun the script again on the same drive. And usually on the second pass, it will do everything correctly. Okay, so in this particular case, we should match up perfectly with this, and if we overlay this, we can see that sure enough we do. So everything ran fine, and we have a properly formatted Xbox One drive, 2 terabyte drive. So we're going to press any key to continue. It's going to put the language files back, and then close the window. Okay. So there we go. Now we have one last step, which is we need to put the OS files on our drive. And so we can do that by opening an Explorer window here. I'm going to close these just so you get an original experience. So there you go. So you open that up, and you'll have a bunch of drives. The script automatically puts the drive automatically attaches the drive letters to each of the partitions. The one we're concerned with here is the X drive. So we're going to double click that, and you can see right now it's empty. So in this particular drive, we're going to want to put the OSU1 files. Now I already have the OSU1 files downloaded here, but just to show you and for completeness, we'll open a new tab here. And again, it's linked in the description of this video. And basically this is the link here. If you click that link, it'll automatically go to Microsoft and it will download the latest OSU1.zip from Microsoft. I've had a couple of people get a little confused by that. They think that I created the OSU1 files, and I didn't. They come directly from Microsoft. The only files that I provided you are the scripts which we downloaded earlier. So here you just say save, and you can see this is a pretty big file, 3.6 gigabyte. That's why I mentioned you'd want to have a USB flash drive that's larger than 4 gigs or larger. And the reason being, you need to be able to fit the entirety of the OSU1.zip on that flash drive. Okay, so we're not actually going to download it, but if we did, it would go into our downloads folder, and we would right click it and say copy, and we'd paste it onto our desktop. I suppose you don't actually have to do that, but for completeness, that's what I did here. So what we want to do again is right click this and open it with 7-zip, open archive. And we can see in here we have a system update folder. Now we're not going to need a flash drive in this case because we are upgrading a system that's never been used. So the system won't need to be reset or anything like that. At least I don't think it will be. I guess we'll see. But the system update folder is what you'd want to put on a flash drive if you were going to need to do an offline update on a flash drive. And you would just right click this folder, say copy. Where is it? Well, I guess you wouldn't say copy, you'd say extract, and then you'd pick where you'd want to extract it to. So you would extract this to your USB flash drive. In fact, let me just put a flash drive in really quick. Oh, yeah, I have one on my desk here. I use one of my front USB 2 ports. You can see it shows up as an F drive. And so we'll click here, and here's our F drive, and this is where we'd want to put it. So you can see I already have a system update folder on this F drive. Oh, the other thing is make sure your USB flash drive is formatted as NTFS first before you put in the flash drive. But anyways, we'd extract it right to here on the F. So you click F and you'd say OK, and it would put this folder on here. Again, I don't need to do it because it's already there. Okay. Now, as I said, we won't need a USB flash drive to get the system up and running. Instead, we're going to put the system update files on or directly on the hard drive itself. So we're going to want to go into the system update folder, and then we're going to want to go to our X drive again, and we're going to right click here and say new folder, and we're going to name the folder A. And we're going to do it again. We're going to right click, say new folder, and we're going to call it B. Okay. Then we're going to come over to 7-zip. We're going to hold down the shift key and left click to highlight everything, and we want to extract these files, and we're going to want to select our X drive here, and we're going to want to select A. And we'll say OK to that, and it's going to put our update files onto the A folder. Okay, once it's done copying, we're going to close our 7-zip window here, and we're going to come to our our X drive, rather, the system update partition, the X drive. We're going to double click the A folder, and here's all of our files. Now we're going to want to right click the updater, and we're going to say cut, and we're going to click the X here, and we're going to right click and paste. So we're going to put the updater outside of the A folder. Then we're going to go into the A folder now, and again we're going to click the top file, hold down the shift key, and select the bottom file, right click, and say copy. And we're going to come here, click X again, and this time we're going to go into the B folder, right click, and say paste. And so we're going to basically put the update files into both the A and B folder. Okay, and that should do it. So we have the same stuff in A as B, and we click X here. We have the updater on the outside. Okay, so all the other partitions, such as temp content, user content, system support, and system update 2 are empty, and that's fine. User content, the second partition, is the actual partition that you store all your games and apps and profile data. So you can see here, disk free space 1.62. That's what will actually show up on the Xbox One in terms of how much space you have free and or used, and it's based upon this partition. The other partitions you don't directly have any control over. Okay, so that's it. So we're going to eject the disk now and put it back into our Xbox One and boot everything up. Because we verified that the GUIDs of the disk were correct, we can install the drive and put the whole system back together. We really shouldn't have to worry about taking the system apart again. If something goes wrong in the next steps, we'll be able to use the USB flash drive to correct the disk, so we shouldn't have to put it back in our Windows system. There's certain cases where you might have to do that, but as far as we're concerned now, we should be good to go. So we're going to click our disk management here. Here's our drive again. Again, there's the user content. You can see it's bigger than the others. On 500 gigabyte, 1 terabyte, and 2 terabyte drives, the other 4 partitions, the first one here and the last 3, are always the same size. And then here's this unfortunate bit of the 2 terabyte. Again, this isn't my design. This comes from Microsoft. I'm using Microsoft's 2 terabyte drive layout, and they waste 100 gigabytes at the end of the drive for some reason. No idea why. On the 1 terabyte drive, they waste 50 gigabytes. And I think on the 500 gigabyte drive, they only waste like, I think, 700 megabytes, something like that. Anyways, so we're going to come over here again, and we're going to say eject. We actually have both things here, so we could eject our Cruzer, and in case we need that, and we're going to eject our drive. And there you go. Okay, so now we can disconnect the drive by disconnecting the USB from the system, and then disconnect the SATA connector from the drive. Okay, so next time I see you, we'll be putting the Xbox One back together. Okay, so we formatted our 2 terabyte drive, and we're going to start putting the system back together again. So let's start with the SATA connector itself. We just want to plug that straight in. Then we want to attach it to a tray here, again lining up the holes at the bottom. And we'll start putting the screws in. I don't usually put the systems back together. I think in most of my other videos I would try the drive out with the system all still apart. But since I'm not as comfortable with the Xbox One S, and since we know this is a new system and there's pretty much, or a fairly low chance of there actually being a problem with the drive, we'll do the whole process of putting it back together. But as I get more comfortable with doing Xbox One X upgrades, I'll likely try the drive out before putting everything back together again. sure that's all tightened up. Okay, so this is ready to go back into the actual system, which we have here. Let's move this stuff over, make some room. Okay, so we're going to just replug in these cables. The black connector here, this is the actual SATA connector, and then our power connector. And we'll just put the drive down. There are some pegs on this tray. Let's look that up real quick. Some pegs, at least there's, yeah, 2 pegs on either end here that will fit that hole and then that hole. So it nicely lines up for us so that when we flip it over and put the screws back in to hold the drive completely in place, the drive itself isn't wiggling around. Okay, so we have our Blu-ray drive here. Turn this sideways. And we'll do keep forgetting that we're actually looking at the bottom of the system here. So we plug in the SATA connector here first, power connector second, and there's a little guide there. And this just rests. This is interesting. This is just using a rubber sleeve on the end of the drive. This was like the Xbox 360, what are they called? Xbox 360S, I think it was called. The Slim, the second release in 2010. They used this kind of rubber on the back of the drive, and it just sat there too. No screw. The screws held it in place, but not going through the drive itself. It just had this ability to kind of wiggle around. Okay. All right, so the drives are back in place. So now, what's next? Forget what we're looking at. I guess, okay, we got to put the metal cage on. And there's no real trick to this other than that you want to line up the back of the console because the front is pretty open. So it's probably best to be looking at this from the rear of the console. And then just, oops. And you want to line up this here. Should just fit on the back here. You want to just make sure it's in the right spot. And then should go down pretty evenly here. Let's see. There's a little foam pad you might get hung up on a little bit there on the front. So make sure everything. Oops. There we go. There. Yeah. So I was saying there's a foam pad right here. Make sure you don't get hung up on that or that. And then it should go straight down. And again, this is the bottom of the console. And so there are 2 screws that we removed. The smaller screw goes on the left-hand side here. And this actually looks like it goes, I don't remember what was on that side. Oh well. There's something, whatever this is here. If I flip it over, I'll be able to tell you. And then we put the other screw on the other side. There you go, and you can see this actually pulls down the case. There's a little pin here. Not sure what that's from, but that should point through. So if you're putting the screw down, you're having trouble doing it, and you don't see a little black tab here poking out, you might want to reseat this metal casing. Okay, so that's that. So next we're going to add the the front panel. Okay, plug that down. On the front here we have these gold screws, and I think these were T8s. I don't think I'll be able to secure it down. Yeah, so I need to switch the bit here. Okay, should do the trick there. And this is where our LED is. We already swapped out. Okay, so next, let's see. Well, I guess what we can do is put the hard drive screws in. Oh yeah, I mentioned those top screws. So the flat screw goes into, I can't see them, the power's over here. So it must be that round-headed screw. This is looking at the bottom of the console. It goes into the power supply itself, and then this other one goes into whatever's resting behind the hard drive. I didn't really notice. Okay, well, anyway, so we'll put the hard drive screws in. Okay, what I'm noticing here is that the hard drive is actually, because it's upside down, is moved out of place here. So we need to get the screw holes to line up. So I'm just sliding it over, so we should still be able to work with this, but we want to make sure the holes are lined up. And as we tighten these screws, it should pull the hard drive back up. So I'm going to put at least a screw on either end here to hold it in place while we screw this together. And again, we want to, as I mentioned, there's those little pins holding the drive in place. We want them to show up or come through here as we're screwing through. That was me. Now holding the screwdriver down. Okay, and we can see there's that pin came up through there, and on the other side the pin came up through there as well. Okay, so we've got our hard drive secured, and these are the round-headed silver screws. Okay, so we're left with the long screws, which connect the case piece, and the back screws and the screws for the connector here. Okay, so the next thing we got to do is get the bottom piece back on. And we're looking at the top again here, which is still confusing to me. Now, this is actually the trickiest thing that I've had to deal with getting this back together. On the bottom of the Blu-ray drive, there's these little pins. I keep calling everything pins, but there's little plastic things which line up with the bottom of the case. See there? Put it down for a second. So they need to go into here, and I actually had some trouble lining that up. There is a little piece of metal here on the side. What I found was when I'm putting the case in, you make sure this metal case is against this piece as you're trying to put those in, and it'll help line up those slots. And you know when everything's lined up okay, because then the metal case will fit into the bottom slider here perfectly. Okay, but the other tricky part is you want to make sure these two cables, first you want to make sure this cable is outside so you can replug it, and you want to make sure this cable is actually plugged into this bottom case prior to, well, you can do it after this is connected, but you want to make sure these wires are in place. I would suggest plugging this cable in first. And there's a little black line, I think you can see that, on this cable that lines up with the bottom of this panel here. So I'm going to push that in, and once it's pushed in, we're going to push the top clamp down. It's really hard to do for some reason, my index finger. Okay, and then if you've done that properly, so the line there should line up with the bottom of this RF board where our LED and our power button are when you clamp it down. If it doesn't, you just lift this up and then push it in again. But we are in good shape here. That looks good. Okay, so now we need to line up those pins as I was saying before. The best way to do that is to rest it down on the side, on the front like this, and look up in that corner like I was saying. You make sure you push against that pin, that metal piece, and you can actually hear it pop in. So that's actually fine now. And so now this will go over the top like that. See? The screw holes line up. Okay, and then we can just lay it down, and we'll be able to connect our USB and sync button. Okay. I think we can. I think this uses a T8. There was two that used the T8. It was this guy, these two screws here. Oops. Really make sure this connector isn't going to disconnect. It's probably the most secure connector in the whole system. So now we can put our rest of our long screws in. On this system there aren't any extra holes, so it's pretty clear to where they go. For these guys, I suggest potentially turning left first, like you're loosening the screw, and then right. So you turn left and wait for it to make a clicky sound. It's not really working for me, so I'll just tighten it up. As I said, these go into plastic, so you want to be careful with stripping it out. Yeah, they don't seem to click like that, so just tighten them up. It's fine. Some of the other Xbox One models, you could get away with that trick. I think we're good. That's everything all back together there. Hard drive here. Just double checking everything's tight. Okay. All right. So now we just have to get the top case back on. Now you can get a better look at this now. So you can see here's our U-shaped part of the case, whereas this is more like an L. So we want to put the U-shape in first, and then basically pull it over like that. So we want to basically, you can see this better than I can, we want to basically line this up so that we still see a bit of the back of the case, because we need to do the final pull where it goes in. Yeah, so you just want to angle it a bit up, and then it'll fit right in there. And then on this side of the case, you just want to push it down, pull out a little bit so it goes over. There we go. No, they don't really pull it out too much. You just kind of lay it flat. It sort of just fits in. It's kind of a finicky thing, but you'll know when it's all connected, right? And we just push it back, and there we go. And we know we're good here because the screws should line up really nice. I really do appreciate how much easier this system is to take apart and to deal with. It's almost as if it's designed to be taken apart. Okay, and then they don't even use security bits on the outside. They just use standard hex bits, which is fine by me. Okay, that's everything back together. You can just double check that our buttons sound good. Okay, they seem to. We'll test them again when it's actually powered on. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll hook this up here. We should basically see what we saw before when we were trying out the system for the first time with the drive it originally came with. But we will check that out ourselves here. So I'm going to power this on, and I'm going to switch to, I don't want you to miss any of the startup this time, so I'm just going to power it on from my capture card, and then I'll back out again, and you'll be able to actually see the LED and all the controllers lit up. Okay, So let's do that right now. Let's go to our AverMedia card here and let's start it up. Okay, so right away it did not like our the way we put the system update on the A and B folders. We get the E106. E106 is actually quite common for this. Okay, so I take it back. We're going to need our USB flash drive, which we already disconnected. Here, so let me show you what I'm going to do here. So we have our USB flash drive. We're going to put this into the USB port in the front. Oh, and at this point too, we can test our eject. Let's listen. Okay, so our eject is working okay. And here, let me show you the front of the console as well. Move the keyboard back a little bit. There's the green LED, and I'll show you a nice picture of that. It's hard to see with all the light in here. It bounces off everything. You can't really get an idea for how that looks. But we're going to take our Scorpio controller also with a green LED. Okay, let's switch back to the AverMedia here. Okay, so what we're going to do in this case is we're going to troubleshoot, and we're going to tell it to do the offline system update. So my guess what happened here is that the Xbox One X, this was actually manufactured in September. I know this because of the on the back of the system here. So it probably has an older version of the OS than the latest OSU one I downloaded, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, here, let me check my OSU one files. Yeah, they're actually dated October 21st. So yeah. So when you see the E106, it generally means that the system update volume doesn't match the version on the NAND or the actual Xbox console itself. Anyways, I'll stop talking and we'll fast forward this a bit. Okay, so this one seems to be throwing everything at us here. As you can see, it stopped around 59%. I think I have a video called 58% fix. And basically what that means is it stopped applying the update for some reason. I'm sure we could wait on this forever and nothing would happen. I might give it another few minutes or so. But anyways, what you need to do here is don't listen to what it says and actually shut off the console. And then what we're going to do is do a reset and then apply the update again. The reset will clean up the disk. It probably has something to do with that. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to actually force shut off the system, so you should see this the go out for a second here. I'm going to hold down the power button for... Okay, so it's off. There we go. Okay, so we're going to bring it back up again. Not sure which error we're going to see this time. Okay, still getting E106. So we're going to go down to troubleshoot, and this time we're going to say reset, and we're going to say remove everything. That's fine. And this is what happened to me on the Linux video. We told to remove everything, and it sort of stops, like it doesn't actually restart. Normally it should restart at this point, which we aren't doing. So again, I'll leave this for a few more seconds, but I'll have to force shut it down again, and then we'll do the force update. What should happen though is after we force shut this down, it will boot up and then restart and then boot up again, and that's actually basically cleaning up system update. My guess is the system update partition is the problem here. Didn't like the updates files that we put in place. So doing this again, I'm holding down the power button. Okay, the system's off. Takes a little bit for this to catch up. Okay, we'll hit the power button. Now we should hear a reboot. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, that means it actually is doing a reset. So it shut off. Now it's restarting again. I believe that's where it actually cleans up the files. It just reformats user content and system update. Okay, so let's try this again. We're going to go down to troubleshoot, and we're going to do offline system update again. You can see that again was a little bit different. Here's the error that someone was just bringing up to me, E101. Okay, so I'm starting to think that the E101 error that I'm seeing here is a result of the A and B folders being in the way. So we're going to say continue. I'm going to reset again. I'm going to tell it to remove everything. It also has the OS version listed there too. That's kind of interesting. Now that time it actually reset on its own. So if we get an E101 again, what I'll do is pull the drive again and just delete everything on the update partition. Okay, so we're back to E106. Try again. I did just go back and try to download the OSU one again just to see if anything had changed, and it's still the same October 21st files. So I'll keep our fingers crossed here. I don't want to have to take the whole system apart again, but if I do, I do, and then that's what we learn here is that we don't want to do the A and B folders in this particular case. And I did a Windows video and a Linux video. In the Linux video, I didn't do the A and B folders, and the Windows update I did. And I had different results each time, so it's this can be kind of a potluck thing, I guess. Anyways, we'll just let it run. Okay, I was a little worried about that because it just did a reset. What's interesting is that we're actually seeing an Xbox One X picture now. Okay, so here we go. We're back to square one again. Excellent. Okay, so I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to add my account to this system and check everything out like I normally do, because well, because everything seemed like it was going fine. But with all those resets that we just did, I want to verify that the disk is still 2 terabytes. And we also want to make sure we can play a game. So I'm going to actually go through the initial setup process here. So I'll start it. And when I get to actually adding my account, I will stop the video and then come back when I'm at the dashboard. Or, yeah, the dashboard. Okay, we're connected to the internet. United States. See if there's an update out there. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video here, add my account. Okay, so this should be my last shot. Where I left off, I was adding my account. I've done that now, and I've downloaded Mrs. Pac-Man actually on the system. So you can see the system running with the green LED. And I have the controller here. And I'll hit back here really quick and just show you playing here real quick. And then what we'll do is we'll go into the settings in a second. Yeah, I don't really want to play this for too long. I just wanted to show you. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to go actually conveniently put that up there so that it would block my account and I don't have to blur it out. I'm trying to save time. But what we want to do is go into settings, and I'll show you the storage. And as you can see, it's a 2 terabyte drive. Okay, so everything worked. I had the extra E101 error. Well, I had a bunch of extra steps I had to do at the end there that I don't normally have to do, but that might help other people who see those issues in the future. They'll know what to do. And basically all you do is keep resetting the damn thing till you get it to actually do what you want it to do. So anyways, alright, so that should do it for this video. I guess the only thing remaining to do, well, I just wanted to show you the console in action. So generally what I have to do now is I have to go in and remove my account from the system before I send it back to the user. But yeah, so I guess that should do it. So that's the Xbox One X upgrade.